Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5 The Zone. Welcome in on a Wednesday morning. Coming up today, we're going to get to the NBA playoffs. Tim Lacombe is going to join us. We're going to talk hoops with him later in the show. Also, Brandon Dart, former Utah football player, joins us to talk about his son, Jackson Dart, who will probably be the third quarterback drafted, maybe in the middle of the first round, more likely late first round, possibly in the second. We'll talk with Brandon Dart about how things have changed since back in the day and what he thinks about the draft process and how things are likely to play out for his son. That's all coming up later in the show. Later in this hour, Steve Cleveland on NBA playoffs, and also Thor Nystrom is going to join us next. Now, Thor Nystrom is a highly opinionated NFL draft analyst and wildly entertaining. He's going to join us next. You'll hear our conversation with him. Stay with us. DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. We are joined now by Thor Nystrom, NFL draft analyst for Fantasy Live. Thor, good morning.
How you boys doing?
We're doing well. We're intrigued. What is going to happen when the NFL starts picking guys? Some years it's just completely nailed down. This year seems like there's a little wiggle room. Seems like there's a little bit of doubt.
I would agree with that. You know, like last year we had the 6 quarterbacks go in the top 12, and when you have so many good quarterbacks, or any good quarterbacks, you get the free spots on the board when you're doing the mock exercises. This year, it seems like we got the free spot at 1 with Cam Ward. I think we got a free spot at 2 with Travis Hunter. And from there on, 3, I'd say 85% Abdul Carter, but there is that 15% of Shadir Sanders. When it's a quarterback decision, the ownership group gets involved. And I found it very interesting that the ownership group traveled with the coaching staff of the New York Giants to witness Shadir Sanders' last workout in person. But certainly after that, the draft is wide open. We have no idea which way this is going to go. And that speaks to the less quality quarterbacks, the less quality true blue elite prospects at the top of the board.
One of the great things about you, Thor, when I go to see what have the national guys, what have they posted when they come on our show, I usually have to type in their name. But with you, I just type in Thor, and your last name automatically comes up. And so it saves me time because there's not many guys who have the name that you have. And so I put up your thing, see what you got, and your big board. And did you chuckle when you wrote Travis Hunter and you put comp Shohei Ohtani? Did you laugh to yourselves?
It was, yeah. I mean, I do all the comps every process and the 500 player big board, at the 500 comps. And with Hunter, for a while, I was experimenting around with different things. I realized pretty quick I couldn't do one player. There was no one where it would be accurate 1-to-1. Then I was experimenting with Odell Beckham as a receiver and, player X as a cornerback. And finally, I was just like, I'm just going to put Shohei Ohtani. It's the quickest way to get the idea across. We haven't seen a guy like this before.
Well, that was a good one.
When people talk about him playing both sides of the ball, there are people who say, well, physically he's going to get worn down, he's going to shorten his career, he's going to cost himself money, and that he will come around to the idea of be a defensive back and then, in the red zone on third down, 15 or 20 snaps of offense is plenty. Does that change where he's drafted on the board if you think that's really the way it's going to go? How much do you weigh in it, or is it just pure talent and then figure the other stuff out down the line?
Travis Hunter's not going to come around to the world's way of seeing this. The world will come around to the way Travis Hunter sees this, which is he is an every down player on both sides of the ball. He's going to get protected from himself as a rookie in terms of that snap count. Might be 80 to 85% as a corner, 40 to 45 as a wide receiver. He will be playing both ways from day one. He wouldn't accept a situation where they didn't allow him to. He's talked about that. He wants to be Shohei Ohtani. So get your popcorn ready. We're about to see something we've never seen before.
Yeah, it'd be cool to see. I'm looking forward to it for sure. This part of the country now with our local teams here, BYU and Utah being in the Big 12, we see these Big 12 players, and then obviously Utah and Colorado were in the Pac-12. So an opportunity to see Shadir Sanders play many times, seen him play in person, interviewed him and all that. I come away impressed. I know there's a circus around him to an extent because of his father and all those things, but I like him. I'm wondering if it's a situation where it might be an Aaron Rodgers where he could go early, but if he doesn't go early, then he goes much later. How do you see it?
I think that there's a shot of that, and I also like the example that you evoked there. You know, people will be like, oh, the quarterback's sliding, so that must mean he's trash. Not always, right? There's circumstantial things that cause players to slip sometimes that should not. Rodgers is a great example of that, obviously in the class with Alex Smith, and they were expected to go right next to each other, and then as the bell opened on that thing, the one went early, and then the other one just kept sliding, and obviously that turned out to be a mistake for the NFL. But I'm with you with Shadir Sanders 100%. He's my QB1 in this class. I have him 8 overall. I have Cam Ward 9 overall, so not a huge difference, but I do prefer Shadir. Elite accuracy, elite placement with a guy that does not turn the ball over. That translates. It doesn't matter the profile. That translates, right, to the modern NFL, and he is going to translate. Shadir Sanders is going to be a good starting quarterback in the NFL for a long time. I think he's being undersold, and I think a lot of the narrative around him has been unfair. If there's any trepidation coming from NFL buildings, it is not about Shadir Sanders' personality. It is about the specter of his father and the fan base turning on the coaching staff. If you start slow and coming with the pitchforks and demanding that you be fired for Deion Sanders, that is where the trepidation is coming from.
The running game, the running backs, we know they've been just dismissed and devalued, but is the cycle coming back around? The Eagles get Barkley, they win the Super Bowl, they're second in the NFL in rushing, only to the Ravens, who have a quarterback-running back combo. The Commanders, this breakout team, and I get it, they've got a quarterback who's got charisma and all that. They also have the third best rushing yardage total in the league. Green Bay and Detroit running the ball well, and they had good seasons. Is Ashton Genty's stock going to be up because we're seeing 5 or 6 teams here really ride a running game to success, and somebody else is going to think, yeah, we ought to do that too, and this guy gets a lot of yards after contact?
That's for sure part of it. And then Ashton Genty being a legitimate generational prospect at that position, of course, being the other part of it. And then in this sort of scenario, in this sort of paradigm of this draft class where it's a little bit down at the top, like I was mentioning, I think Ashton Genty, you're in play to go off the board as soon as 4. In my opinion, to the Patriots, I think he's in play for Jacksonville at 5. I also think that slot is the prime one if a team is going to make the swing up to beat the Raiders to the punch. His floor is the number 6 pick, but these are fair slots for Ashton Genty. I consider him the best running back prospect to enter the NFL since Saquon Barkley, the aforementioned Saquon Barkley, who of course went number 2 his year. I think Genty is a better prospect than Bijan Robinson, who went 8 recently. The price tag on that just is what it is. You're going somewhere between those slots, and like I said, in this environment that we're in, it juices his value even more. Ashton Genty's going real quick when the bell opens on Thursday night.
Looking at your top 100 ranking, you had several running backs from the Big 12 in your top 100, and we got an experience this year with really focusing on Big 12 because both of our schools here were in the Big 12. I had said earlier, how come you like all these running backs out of the Big 12 to go certainly in the top 100?
Yeah, they were stacked with them, weren't they?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we just had so many of them. One of them that I like probably a little bit more than consensus, really like this kid's game is R.J. Harvey from UCF.
Right.
I comp him to Tajay Spears. He came into college as an undersized dual-threat quarterback. R.J. Harvey did sign with Virginia, and then he transferred to UCF, of course, converted to running back. Very, very explosive. He has this bowling ball build, but he had 4.4 flat speed. He's decent between the tackles, too, because that bowling ball build, and he has this kind of darty agility, pretty good vision as well. And he's going to be a better receiver in the NFL than he was in college. They had a very limited quarterback and passing attack at UCF. I talked to R.J. Harvey in Mobile at the Senior Bowl about his deployment as a receiver at UCF, and he kindly and respectfully mentioned that he also thought he could have been used more as that. Didn't get to run as many routes beyond the line of scrimmage, but down in Mobile in the one-on-ones, he was torching linebackers and safeties on his routes, breaking ankles out there. So big fan of his. Big fan of Cam Scattaboo. He's going to be going on day 2 on Friday night, so it's going to be interesting to see where he falls on that day 2, but he'll be going then. Devin Neal and DJ Giddens as well. Big fans of their game. So, yeah, I mean, the Big 12, they had all kinds of running backs, as you guys know, and we're going to see a bunch going this weekend.
Thor Nystrom, NFL draft analyst for Fantasy Life, joining us. Thor, just for one moment here, can we turn this on its ear? Instead of talking about the players and where they may go, I'm interested from the players' perspective. Obviously, teams have bad records. They don't draft high. But there's teams that have bad records, and then there's franchises that just don't know what they're doing, and you're just going into a cesspool if you get drafted there. If you were a top 10 pick, which organizations would you want to go to because they just had a down year and stuff happens, and which ones would you just dread getting picked by because they just don't know what they're doing?
The latter one, I would definitely say the Giants. I don't trust the Giants. I think the Giants administration should have been fired last year. They got the reprieve. I think there's a decent shot that they're going to be fired at some point during the regular season. I like Dable. I think he's smart, but the front office I think is really bad, and the way that they constructed that roster is horrible. So that is the one that I would for sure want to avoid. One that I'd probably want to go to, I'm intrigued by Jacksonville. They hired a lot of smart guys. Their previous administration was kind of dogmatic. In my industry, we kind of had fun with Trent Baalke sometimes because he had this dogmatic adherence to thresholds. And so he was always getting the guy with the long arms and, picking him over the better player that had short arms. We always had a good time with that. But now you go from the oldest of schools to the newest of schools. You have the young general manager that came from McVay. You have Liam Cohen there. So I'm very interested to see what that would probably be the one where I would point to it and be like, that could be a good situation. Chicago 2 at 10, but they're a little bit different.
A kid like Genty, Boise State, so it's perceived as lower level of competition. But when you think about it, all these guys have lower level of competition because they're not going up against NFL teams. How do they judge guys that don't play from the powers? Because it seems like every year there's guys that don't play in those conferences, but yet they end up being great professional players, and there's some guys that you miss on no matter where you're from.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, you're looking at the physical package and that stuff. And then did you get any tape on him against better competition? And then, of course, how much did he dominate the quote unquote lower competition? With Genty, it was always the packed boxes. He dominated those. When he stepped up in competition, he did very well against those teams. I was impressed with his playoff game against Penn State, an utterly elite defense in Penn State, and they just stacked the box on him. So it was 8 guys in the box every single time. It was like that Jon Snow gif with the horses descending on him. There was one run, Ashton Genty in that game broke 6 tackles for an 8-yard gain. You want to know about the kind of situation he was in, but we have seen him, like I said, against the better competition, licking them as well. The broken tackle numbers are prodigious. Cam Scadaboo finished number 2 in the FBS with 101 forced missed tackles this year. Genty had 50 more than him. Genty had more yards after contact this season than any other individual FBS running back had total. Like, his numbers don't make sense. They break the system, and it's just a different kind of a prospect. So you can project that he is going to be very, very good in the NFL.
Jackson Dart went to high school here in Utah, Roy High and Corner Canyon. Where do you think he will go? Where do you think he should go? Is he going to overperform or underperform his draft status?
Yeah, so for me, I think the Steelers are probably a good bet for that. He fits Arthur Smith's offense, and then the way that organization is typically the traits that they valued in quarterbacks, he has them. So I would say they're probably leader in the clubhouse. Jackson Dart's high, like a first half of the second round prospect on my board, but certainly understand a team taking him in the late first round. And really my only thing with Jackson Dart is just there's a black box in his evaluation that we don't know about. I like the physical package. I like the stats he put up, the statistical profile. I like that he played it in 2 different systems in college. I like that he overcame adversity on a couple different accounts. He was overlooked as a recruit, as you guys know. The reason that he finally jumped up, you guys recall, the state of Utah, they played the high school season during the COVID season when most people didn't.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and he had transferred, and then there was a USC position coach that happened to be watching ESPN when at the bigger high school. Jackson Dart was on, and he went utterly ballistic that game, and then all of a sudden the recruiting services started to pick up on it. But, you overcome that, you become the high-ranked recruit, you get the offer to USC, then you get ejected out immediately. You're looked at as the face of the program, but then they go and they get Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams. You go across the country, you dominate again for the next 3 years. Love all that stuff, love the athletic profile, all that stuff. But at the Lane Kiffin offense, as you guys know, you're given decisions prior to the snap, and that's why there was the heavy preponderance of going to the first read. I'm curious to see Jackson Dart, the decisions after the snap when the bullets are flying. Because of Kiffin's system, we just don't know how he's going to do in that. So because of that black box, I had to lower the grade a little bit. That's why I have him as a high second rounder.
Do you have other quarterbacks going in the second round, or are they going to be later?
The other guy right around there for me is Jalen Milroe, and I do think Jalen Milroe is going to go in the top 33 picks. I think the end of the road for Jalen Milroe, I think if he gets to the top of the second round, I believe the Cleveland Browns will take him with the first pick on Friday night. I also think you could see a short trade up, and I think Cleveland is a team that makes most sense to me there. Cleveland, their offensive coordinator, Tommy Rees, was Alabama's offensive coordinator in 2023 when Jalen Milroe looked by far the best he has in his career. I also think it makes sense that Jalen Milroe, his game took a step back last year. You're playing for a guy in Kalen DeBoer who is forcing you to stay in the pocket on the passing concepts. Jalen Milroe needs to be allowed to leave the pocket when he wants as a passer, and that's part of the reason why he was so dominant under Tommy Rees. But Tommy Rees knows how to build an offense around Jalen Milroe. So because of that, Andrew Berry talked last week, the general manager there at his press conference, about how they've already thought about how they would construct an offense around Jalen Milroe. Andrew Berry said he's going to be the fastest quarterback in the NFL from day one. So I think he's going to go latest, like I said, 33, but otherwise late first round. Recall, he got the invite to the NFL draft from the NFL.
Will NFL teams tank this season to get Arch Manning? Is there too much hype because of his name and the school, or is he really the guy and teams ought to tank for him because they're going to be set up for a decade or more?
I'll say this first, because I know there are people that bristle about the idea of tanking in the NFL. It's more prevalent than people think. Players do not tank, right? When the 11 players that are out there, everyone is going full bore, and coaches mostly do not tank. And Brian Flores could tell you all about that. You know, the issue that he had with the Dolphins, the two groups that tank, it's ownership and it's management, right? They're the ones that are looking at it from the higher vantage point. And you do see scenarios where teams are set up to fail heading into the season, to your point, like setting up the tank. I'm going to be, to your question specifically, I'm curious, for instance, number 9, the Saints. Do the Saints try to get aggressive? Let's say Shadir Sanders falls down. Do you go with that and do you try to then fill your holes and be more competitive year one under the new staff? Or do you go the other way? If Shadir Sanders falls down there, do you say, no, we're going to toss Spencer Rattler out there this year. Derek Carr says he's injured. No problem. We're shutting you down. Spencer Rattler, you're going to be our quarterback. We are going to recoup the value from your draft slot, Spencer Rattler, by you leading us to the top of the 2026 NFL draft board. And hopefully someone can convince Arch Manning to declare early. You know, all the other Manning stayed 4 years, so we do not know if Arch Manning would declare after 3 years. But a couple teams like that in the top 10, I'm curious to see the direction they go, because I think they're going to telegraph to you, do we intend to be serious this year, or are we trying to get to the top of the board next year?
Penn State tight end Tyler Warren, is he good enough to date somebody like Taylor Swift?
He might be. He actually might be. Yeah, Tyler Warren, absolute stud. You can think of it like Brock Bowers from last year, but 3 inches taller, 30 pounds heavier. Used in a very similar way his final season at Penn State to the way that they used Brock Bowers. You get the trick play utility. You get the running utility. They'll do end arounds with him. With Tyler Warren, they did a lot of wildcat quarterback. And you can't just load up for him, you know, and put literally everyone in the box. Tyler Warren went to college as a huge dual-threat quarterback. Talked before about R.J. Harvey was the small right-handed dual-threat quarterback going into college. Tyler Warren was the enormous left-handed dual-threat quarterback going into college. And he was targeted as Will Levis's replacement on Penn State as like the big dual threat quarterback that did a lot of wildcat short yard stuff, grinding out first downs and touchdowns, stuff like that. But when he got to campus, they were like, all right, this kid's a tight end. They converted him to that. But as that wildcat quarterback, you will see Tyler Warren throw the ball every now and again. And I believe he completed every pass he made last year. But you get all that stuff. You get the manufactured touch stuff, get him the ball within 6 yards of the line of scrimmage. He's going to break tackles, move the chains for you, and he can also make plays down the field. He looks more like Jeremy Shockey to me down the field with that sort of a stuff. But you get sort of a mashup of the games of Jeremy Shockey and Brock Bowers with him. Some people I've seen comps to Gronkowski. As a receiver, I can get there with you on that. Where that comp falls down is Tyler Warren's not a good blocker. He definitely gives effort, but Tyler Warren has short arms. It's the one nitpick on his physical profile, and you see this when he's against power edges on the line. They get their hands on him first, and then Tyler Warren, his technique's not great. His effort's always there, but the technique's not great. So he a lot of times will give up his chest, and then he can get shed really quick. But a very, very good player in terms of being an offensive weapon that advances the ball for you.
Any local guys from any of our local schools you want to give a shout out here before we let you go?
I want to give a shout out to Mr. Jalen Royals. I love Jalen Royals' game, and I think he gets slept on sometimes. And in this bad receiver class, I like Jalen Royals. I see a long-term starter there. Royals told us in Mobile that the NFL teams have been talking to him about being a slot. I think he could be pretty dangerous there. That's a guy who's got the juice to get downfield. You can't get him off the line. He's really well built, like with the packed-in muscles there. He's got the play strength off the line. He has good footwork with the release package, everything like that. And then he's super reliable. He can handle volume. Talk about a kid who overcame adversity, right? I mean, he was totally overlooked in high school recruiting. He grew up in Georgia's backyard, and Georgia totally missed on him, as did the other colleges around there. Had to go to a military school for a year. Then he went to Utah State. Of course, had the late breakout, but everything we saw over the last year and a half, just wildly impressive. And one other thing on Jalen Royals, the first couple of days of the Senior Bowl, we were watching him from the stands, and he didn't look just quite as fast as he did on film. It was like 90 to 95%, and started to wonder, is he playing through the injury that ended his season? Did he rush back for this? So at the media availability on Wednesday at the Senior Bowl, asked him about that. And he said, yeah, I'm not 100%. And I said, Jalen, why are you out here? And he said, because I wanted to come out and show the NFL that I can compete against the best, right? So that's a kid. He rushed back so he could be there at that event on that stage in front of the NFL and prove that point. And he acquitted himself well, particularly in the circumstances. I think it's a tough kid. I think it's a strong-minded kid. I think he's going to start in the NFL for a long time.
Thor, we appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for bringing the energy. You're the man.
Always good talking to you, boys.
Thor Nystrom, NFL draft analyst for Fantasy Life, joining us right here on The Zone. When we come back, we are talking basketball with Steve Cleveland. DJ and PK, proudly presented by our title sponsor, Black Desert Resort, Utah's premier golf resort. Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5 The Zone. Sometimes when you're doing radio, things go wrong. Right before you're about to go to a guest, his line drops. You don't know how long till he comes back. You get off on some random conversation about music. And sure enough, then Steve Cleveland shows up. Here's Steve, our conversation with him. We went through exactly that process at the start of the segment. Steve talking hoops and music right here on The Zone.
Do you believe in karma? And if you do, log on to KSLSports.com to help raise money for a great cause and create some good vibes for the Utah Jazz and the NBA Draft Lottery. It's the KSL Sports Zone's 2-for-1. Donate at least $2 to Intermountain Primary Children's Hospital in hopes of the Jazz recouping winning basketball here in Utah. Go to KSLSports.com and donate your $2 today. Oh, we can't say it, but we can say it. He coming.
How did you come up with that? That was like a 40-year-old song that I haven't thought of in forever. And it took me a second. Do you believe in karma? And do you believe in magic is the next word.
Because I had older sisters.
I don't know who sings the song. I remember hearing it.
Steve Cleveland would know, I bet. He would. He's of that generation. He's of my sister's generation.
Steve, who sings that? Do you believe in magic?
I think it's Love and Spoonful.
Yeah, I knew you would know, brother. I knew you would know. He's right.
Oh, my gosh.
I knew exactly he would know. Yes.
I know.
Spot
that's
on.
my generation, man. I'm a huge music guy, too. Probably I should get that, but no.
Released in the United States in 1965 on the Kama Sutra label, in the UK in 66.
Yeah,
I didn't know it was that old. I thought it was a 70s song. Okay.
I was about ninth grade.
There you go. All right. Steve Cleveland for the win right out of the gate. All right, Steve, predict something else for me. Riddle me this, Batman. Clippers or Nuggets? Two super close games, one overtime, the other a three-pointer. We got two star players doing their thing. Kawhi was good in game one, but then had some mistakes when it really mattered. He was great in game two. The Joker's awesome. Is it going to come down to role players, or does Kawhi have to just be completely out of his mind? What do you think?
You know what? I do believe if it's Kawhi is, 28, 30, 35 points, I think that they're in a good position. I'm concerned about. I mean, I don't question the Joker at all. But the instability of coaching changes and those kinds of things. I know guys can gather together. We can do this, on our own. But I like the Clippers to win this series, and I think that if Kawhi, obviously, the big thing is Kawhi being healthy and Zubac and Powell and Harden playing well, but I would love to see the Clippers win. They've gone through a lot of stuff here. The Nuggets seem to be a little bit reeling just because of coaching changes. So my pick would be the Clippers, and we'll see what plays out. But that's who I'd like to watch play.
How much time does it take for guys to be able to just know each other and essentially, I guess, get on the same page? You look at Doncic, which is the big trade, and we recited a couple of instances in history when the Jazz got Hornacek. They got a midseason, and they really took off after that. When the Lakers got Gasol, they got a midseason, took off after that. So you've got examples of time, and you see this in college with all these transfers coming together. You saw with BYU, they really didn't get their stride until just about the halfway point of the conference season.
Well, I think with Doncic and with LeBron, you have two really skilled guys. But I think when you get to the playoffs, and you guys have probably talked about this, and a lot's been said about it. And I love watching them play because there's just so much skill involved. But I'm concerned about the tenacity of rebounding and defensively, and having that presence, and having a guy inside, and just if the whole focus is from the perimeter and they're not getting to the basket to score. I mean, the Lakers are set up to win this thing. I mean, they have that kind of talent, but obviously the Timberwolves had a different thought, and they kind of took it to them. So I think defensively, I'm concerned about the Lakers, and I'm not having really a significant post presence. It's hard to win 7-game series and without having that kind of defense. And Edwards and McDaniels and Naz Reid, those are all guys that can score. Randall, I mean, it's a tough out for the Lakers. I mean, I know they're the third seed, but if it's just going to be about perimeter threes, and I don't think the Lakers have enough to do that. And I kind of grew up a Lakers fan, and I'd like to see them play well. And I love Doncic. I love the fact how he plays. It's fun to watch. But I don't know if there's the grit and the toughness and the rebounding needed to win that series.
Like the Lakers, the Warriors made a late-season trade deadline move, and it has paid off big time. Butler, he does have grit. Holy cow, that guy has grit, and he's led deep playoff runs in Miami from really poor seedings after fairly mediocre regular seasons for the team. But nonetheless, that's a lot of change midseason, and Oklahoma City looks like they have everything except championship experience. They don't have that. They're young, and they haven't been there before. But other than that, they look like they've got everything. So as we sit here and talk Warriors, Clippers, Lakers, should we just be talking Thunder, or should we look at what the Warriors are doing and think maybe those guys?
Well, I do think I don't think you can sleep on them. I mean, they're your homegrown Williams, Hartenstein, Shai Gilgeous, Wiggins. They've done it. They've kind of not had the kind of respect that they probably deserve. I mean, they're kind of a number one seed coming out of the West. But this is their opportunity, and I can't imagine a bigger moment for that franchise. And, they're going to end up playing the Nuggets and the Clippers in the second round. They'll beat the Grizzlies, obviously, but those are not real tough outs either. I mean, despite the Nuggets issues and coaching situations and the Clippers being hungry, I would love to see the Thunder get to the finals. I love watching Steph and those guys, but all the superstars. But it's time for somebody different, as far as I'm concerned. And I'd love to see the Thunder do that. And Holmgren seems to be healthy. They seem to be healthy. And is there a physicality and a toughness there? I don't know. I don't watch them enough on TV. I see the games, the Sunday games or the Saturday games. So I don't see a lot of film on them. But for my preference, I'd love to see OKC get to the finals.
We're talking about how it is tricky for college coaches as they get these guys into their programs and their NBA guys, and how they have to develop them for the NBA level, but also try to win. Yegor Demon's father, I saw a thing that he was talking about. His son couldn't really develop his game to the level because they were in a winning situation, and he compared that over to Rutgers with Ace Bailey and Ron Harper's son Dylan. Those guys were able to work on their games because they weren't winning to the level BYU, and they didn't even make the tournament. You've coached a number of guys that have gone on to the NBA, and I'm like Paul George would be the classic example. It's not like he came out of nowhere by the time he was, I think in his second year. You probably had a good idea that he was going to be an NBA player. How does a coach work that? Because, and we're going to get that this next season here with Devonsa coming in and thinking that there's a lot of pressure on Kevin Young to make sure this kid has a successful one-and-done season, because the last thing you want is to have him come in as the number one pick and then drop way low. That's not good. But yet he's got to balance winning because they're there to win. It just seems like it's a balance there for a coach, and it could get tricky.
Anytime you have this much movement, and with the transfer portal and, NIL and the thing that first comes to me is you better have a really great relationship with these young men and or young women in that sense, as in terms of the women's programs. But I think certainly with AJ and Rob Wright coming from Baylor, and you get Richie coming back, and are they going to have that kind of connected team? I mean, you've got guys that, young players like Satan and Diamande and Rob Wright, and the guy that you don't want to sleep on. I really like Chamberlain Burgess. I happen to have a grandson that plays in that league, and so I watched him play. But I think there could be a concern that there are different agendas, and they're not all just financial agendas. It's kind of, I want to develop my game so that I can be ready to go to the league, and I need to work on my three-point shooting, or I need to work on my body. I think BYU will offer all of those things. Their strength and conditioning program, I've spent some time there with the guys there, and they're really committed. But you don't know. I mean, everything's so transparent with parents, with coaches, with players, with teammates, and it's more difficult today to coach. There is no question about it. And I think that you have to be aware of those things. And, Coach Young, I think he'll handle it well. I mean, he's been in the league. He's been around guys that, that are very high profile and have expectations. But in the things that I've just watched in the year here, this staff has done a pretty good job of keeping people's heads right, and despite who's coming and going, and you just have to kind of deal with it. But I'm looking at this roster right now, and you got Keita coming back, you got Boscovich, you got Baker. There's three seniors. Kozlowski, a young player that we haven't really seen play yet. But then, with Staten and Diamande and AJ and Richie, Rob Wright, this is a team that's, anything less than Sweet 16 is probably considered a failure for the year. I think most people feel like this to be an Elite Eight or a Final Four team. Now, we know it's easy to talk about that stuff in April, but at the end of the day, this is a really, really talented team. And it won't be because of the talent that they lose. It'll be because if they have issues with challenges, it'll be that they don't have that chemistry, they don't have that togetherness and connectedness. And I think that's going to be a really, really important thing for that BYU staff. And again, Coach Young, he's been around the NBA. He's been around guys that have high expectations, and so you kind of have this at the collegiate level, just to kind of maybe not quite the level of the NBA. But I think KY, he's a guy that I think he's fit for this job, man. He's been around these guys, but controlling the parents, all the outside noise, you always have to be careful about it. But just on paper, this looks like it's going to be a really good team. And like I said before, anything less than a Sweet 16 would probably be a real disappointment.
Andy Toulson was on, and obviously his son was transferring, and Andy has both coached and recruited, so he's certainly got the old rules, right? And he was figuring out the new ones as they navigated, the new reality. And he was saying that BYU wasn't in the final group because basically it came down to, they'd promised quite a bit of money to their top 4 or 5 guys and a little bit of money for everybody else, and it wasn't going to work out. The fit wasn't there. And I was thinking, if I had to budget for this, knowing full well that, as PK says, people are always going to come back wanting more. Do you think if you were coaching a team, you'd probably have a big chunk of the money going to probably about 4 guys who play most of the minutes, take most of the shots, are going to be on the court in the biggest moments at the end of games? And then you're probably playing another 4 guys at a lower level because they're the rotation. And then the rest of the roster, you get something you're developing. And if you develop in one of those top 8 players, you get a boost next year. You think you'd break it out something like that? Or is it too formalized and you really have to figure it out every year?
I like that model a lot. And I think that, and I think realistically, people, and I know parents can kind of get sideways on things, but certainly you do need to take care of that elite group. And then, like you said, you come down to that next group of guys that is either developing or maybe have been in the program. Like Takeda, he has a real value with his team. You don't look at him and think that here's a guy getting $4 or $5 million NIL money. I don't know what they're getting. But I think I like how you set that up. I think that framework and that model is a good one. It's a good one, and it's a lot of this is so new that just developing a model like that. If we were thinking back 2 or 3 years ago, what in the world? What are we talking about? But I think you have to do that. It's just like a business. It's set up like a business, and you've got outside influences from parents and AAU to agents and all the people you got to manage and massage. And, one of the things that, and I don't know, I've watched BYU and I know they've got a huge staff. And I kind of thought, how do you control like 15 guys on a bench? How does that, you got to delegate, you got to make sure everybody has responsibility. But I think in this day and age of college basketball, you're going to see staffs with 10, 11, 12, 13 people because you need to, as a head coach, you just can't do those things. You delegate those things and you coordinate that through team meetings and not team meetings, but with coaches and stuff and stay on top of it. But yeah, I think that is the model, and I think you have to be prepared for that. I mean, we had 5 guys on our staff when I was coaching, and a few managers, and it worked out all right. It was just a different time, but could never get away with that today.
Yeah. Your favorite concert that you saw?
Man, okay. I'm going to give you a couple answers. Okay. One, I remember the first time being in L.A. and seeing and going to an Earth, Wind, and Fire concert.
Yes.
And
sing a song.
I watched them a few more times after that, but that had an impact on me, in terms of what really just impacted me. And I've gone to a lot of different concerts, and that music is something I've really enjoyed. I think that I remember seeing Fleetwood Mac in Anaheim Stadium. My wife loved that, and that maybe been my favorite date, taking her somewhere, and that was fun. I've seen the Stones. I went and saw the Stones in Vegas a few months ago when they were down there, and that was fun. There's so many. I kind of, most of the music I listened to was R&B. And so, and what was fun is those guys got older, and they'd fill through, you'd have your local little fairs and things, and all of a sudden you got a group like Earth, Wind & Fire who, it's their kids, it's different people that have come in, but the music's still the same. So I had a huge influence with R&B. I'm trying to think. Give me one of your favorites, and then my mind's gone blank here. What concert would you want to go to today?
Well, today I've morphed into more country than
that. We all have.
My current, my all-time favorite band was the Eagles, but that's when I was a kid, and going back, and I realized they only have one original member, but they have two guys that had been there for 40, 50 years, so that counts. But today, I like a lot of the country. Thomas Rhett, Old Dominion, Kenny Chesney, those types of acts that are still out performing, and some guys that are off the radar a little bit. There's a new thing that opened here in Salt Lake. When you get off 6 South, you turn right, and it's an outdoor thing. It's called a cannery or something. And I saw a guy named Billy Currington there. It was outside in the summer. And that was awesome. And he can I like to be close, though. I can't be too far. If I'm too far, it's just not as enjoyable. I got to be as close as possible. Yeah.
No, I completely agree. And I think that I do gravitate to the R&B people, and even though it's usually their grandsons that are playing, and other people that are playing, but I do gravitate to the R&B. And I do love going to concerts. My mind's gone blank a little bit today, but music is a huge thing in my life. And I had the chance I lived in LA for a long time, so it was easy to get access to concerts and see different groups. I remember growing up as a kid living in Fresno and driving down to LA and watching groups and different things, and those were kind of highlights of my life. And those are honestly probably some of the greatest memories of my life as well. Is just being able to travel and go with buddies and enjoy a concert. And
have you been to the Sphere yet? Because I'm going to see Chesney in June to the Sphere in Vegas.
Well, so I had a buddy invited me. So apparently, are the Eagles there?
Yes, they've been doing a long-term residency,
So
and it's supposed to be a retirement thing, but they keep selling out and they keep extending it.
Yeah, and so
why retire, guys?
I know.
Knock it off.
I know. Then you go to Vegas, you don't have to travel.
I played with a golf with a guy yesterday, and he said, "Man, let's go down to the Sphere and we'll play golf and go see that." I said, "Dude, I'm in." So I'm hoping before they leave that I'd like to see them. I have seen them several times, but. Yeah. It's fun to see. Who was at the? Oh gosh, Fleetwood Mac. Who's the woman lead singer there?
Stevie Nicks.
Stevie Nicks. We went. Chip and I got tickets, and to see Stevie at there in Salt Lake, and I had great seats, and man, oh man, it took me back. Every single song you had a memory, and obviously Fleetwood Mac when I was in high school and college was music that I enjoyed, but predominantly probably more R&B. But that recent concert with Stevie Nicks was awesome in Salt Lake.
So, Steve, I need a ruling from the judge then.
Stevie Cleveland.
Stevie Cleveland. I saw the Temptations and the Four Tops. Talk about R&B heroes, right? I saw them at the Arlington Theater in Santa Barbara, which PK would love because it's like a, 2,000-seat venue, something like that. And we were probably, I'm going to say we were like 15th row or something. We weren't right in front, but we were pretty close. And you're never that far away in a place like that. But I think there were like 3 of the original 8 at that performance. And so there was literally a debate. I went with like 6 or 8 guys, right? The college friends were still all in town. And there were 6 or 8 of us. And I remember a heated discussion between a few of them that I largely sat out and just watched the tennis match go back and forth. Are we really seeing them or not? Or is this like some seniors tour and this doesn't really count? And there was no, everybody stuck to their guns. It was just something to argue about to pass time until the lights went down and the show started. So your decision, did I really see the Temps and the Four Tops?
Probably not.
Probably not.
but the thing is, you look at those groups, and like you guys, I mean, I've seen those groups time and time again, and you realize that the guys are getting older and their sons take in and they fill in, and you don't know who it is, but you still just love the music.
Yep.
And you get caught up in the music, and it's like driving down the street, and the song you love comes on, and even though the guys are all dead or 90, but that music never leaves you, man. I mean, for me, personally, the greatest comfort I get, my family and all those things my faith are important. I get that. But the things that brings me peace and calm would be to just on my radio, we can have any song we want, but I'm really influenced by R&B. And I'm 73 years old. I'm singing in the car, man. It's just part of my DNA is especially R&B. And I've been to so many small little concerts and, just little places here and there where these groups will pop up and play. And I remember America, was in Fresno, and I loved America, and in the 70s, and I went and saw them, and you get down to one guy that's actually really playing, and then you got your son and his uncle or somebody, but the music stays the music, man, and it really doesn't matter. It's fun when we all had the opportunity to see them when they were young and watch them and have that energy. But I get energized just as much just listening to that music in my car or going to a little, small town rodeo or something, and there's a country band there, and music lights my life, and I'm sure it does you guys as well. It's just something that's been a big part of my life, and I got no musical talent, none, and that's unfortunate. But I can sing in the shower and I can sing in my car, and nobody hears it.
He's Stevie Cleveland. He joins us every week. Thanks, Coach.
See you, bud.
There's Steve Cleveland, and when we come back, what is trending? The headlines are next.